I love Unacceptable Fringe. He's the best. No one does YouTube better than Unacceptable Fringe.
Oh, what is going on? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Fringe. There's a new freedom convoy that's essentially making its movement towards Ottawa, that it's going to be demanding an election, that this is not no longer a protest for the rights of freedoms to return to people, but rather a protest to call out the Liberals, to call out our parliamentarians, to say that Parliament should not be prorogued, that we should get back down to business, and that an election should be called, that the people demand an election despite Justin Trudeau's cowardice approach to how things are working in Parliament, or his fake resignation for that matter. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into that, because there is a lot to unpack here, a lot to discuss, if you're enjoying the content, excuse me, my voice cracked there, if you're enjoying the content, now is more crucial than ever for you to subscribe to the channel. It does help more than you think. If you're enjoying, censorship is at an all-time high, especially as we go into our next federal election. So please, if you're enjoying this, we're really trying to get to that 50,000 subscriber mark. I'd like to see it happen before the end of January. So please hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. Turn on your bell for notifications. I'll get more onto that before we hit the end of the video. That being said, if you're as mad as the Liberals, as I am, good news, you can now express that. I also want to share with everybody, there will be a link down below. You can pick up my brand new, the F Liberals brand that's all over our shop. Anybody who ever wants to do what I believe is the alternative to this protest that we're going to talk about later in this video, these are good items to have to express your dismay in the government. They're on sale for the next 48 hours, so now's a good time to head over into the shop and grab those. Again, all proceeds help benefit the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into today's story. I want to showcase, we have a major problem with this convoy. A lot of people remember the Freedom Convoy. They have found fond memories of the Freedom Convoy when you think about bouncy castles, barbecues, people coming together, a nation rising from the ashes, a movement like nothing we've ever seen before. I will remind you, some people are still facing trials. Some people's pandemic hasn't ended, and that's part of what this problem is with this new convoy. You'll remember last week, I talked about the idea of everybody getting memberships to the Liberal Party, and that we were going to focus on voting for anybody but Mark Carney and Crystia Freeland to prevent another WEF-agended individual getting into power in the House of Commons. A lot of people said that's illegal. It isn't. It's actually allowed. It's because I'm not telling you how to vote. It's not election interference. There are no laws that state that you can't tell people to go and get a membership to a party, nor that we're going to vote for like-minded individuals. It's there. We went through another video. We showed that there are no laws against that. So people saying it's election interference, no, it's not. Now I dubbed that a digital freedom convoy. Hindsight, we've renamed it. We talked about it on stream on Friday night. We were calling it a digital convoy. I don't want to associate it with a freedom convoy because there are still those individuals that are dealing with their stresses, and really honestly, nothing that we organize is going to be ever to the extent of that of the freedom convoy. Let's be honest. But good friend of the channel, Tom Marazzo, has tweeted out about this account on X, Legally Purdy Media. First off, she's not a media company. Second of all, if you ever see this account, I'm telling you right now, this individual has made it very well known. She is on social media to make money. She is on social media for clicks. She wants nothing more than to drain everybody's wallets for her benefit. I can't say that enough. This lady is an absolute monster, in my opinion. I do not follow her. She blocked me on X because I refused to pump up her numbers to help her advertise. She has treated the pleb certain ways, many others. She's constantly screaming at Tamara Leach, at Chris Barber, all to try and get clout. But here's the biggest problem with what she's doing here. Tom tweeting out, this woman has been stalking and harassing Chris, Pat, and Tamara for months, and is now trying to put them in jeopardy of their bail conditions. Please do not tag any of them if it relates to any protest activity in Canada. If you see anyone doing this, DM them and ask them to stop and remove it. It's bad enough that a few people are even on trial for the actions of the government, but now we have a convoy participant actively trying to get others put in jail for something they have nothing to do with. Now, we're talking about the Election Now protest, which they're calling Convoy 2.0, Ottawa Parliament Hill from the 22nd to 27th of 2025. I spoke to Tom Marazzo about this, and he agreed. Neither of us are going to try to tell you guys how to protest. It's not fair, right? It's hypocritical, given that Tom was involved with the Freedom Convoy itself. No one's going to tell Canadians how to protest, but what I'm telling you right now, this is a bait. This is bait. Don't take it. This is a bad idea. All it's going to do is fuel the fires of the government for anybody going. I can tell you right now, anybody who cares about the future of this country, who cares about our actual freedoms, are not going to this protest. If you're in the Ottawa area, I would strongly discourage you from considering to attend. But again, I will not tell you how to protest. Here's Legally Purdy shouting out, shout out to everyone heading to Ottawa for Freedom Convoy 2.0. I'm sure you're all super grateful for the inspiration Chris Barber, Tamara Leach, and Pat King provided with their leadership, counseling, and use of social media during the 2022 convoy. Be sure to tag them in all your posts next week. They'd be grateful because, after all, they're the leaders of the Freedom Convoy movement. She is setting them up. Keep in mind, Tamara and Chris are going to court in March with this Carter application to try and put Tamara and Chris in jail. She's trying to blacklist them. She's trying to scorn them. She wants the courts to put this over their head if anything goes wrong, and it will, because people are fed up in Canada. They've had enough. Anybody going to this protest is not going to be in a truck. They're not going to be friendly, and they're not going down there for mandate stand. They're going down there demanding blood. They won an election. Tagging these individuals in these posts that they have nothing to do with is going to do nothing more than harm their reputation, sully what good name they have left, and ultimately, she's just looking for clout. This woman is a cancer on social media. I can't stress it enough. Maybe we get into it another time. But again, she's made it very, very clear in the past, all she's interested in is numbers, views, clicks, and money. That's it. I would tell anybody to stay away from this online social media account. These are people who want their 15 minutes of fame. They think that this is going to boost their social accounts. They think that this is going to put them in a better state, when all you're doing is poking a bear when it comes to the government. Now, people are saying, well, this protest is great because they can't actually invoke the Emergencies Act unless Parliament resumes. I'm telling you right now, again, I can't stress it enough. Horrible, horrible idea. You got friends of the channel like Mike Freedom Honey saying, really, Convoy 2.0 losers, this guy? Just stop. No more convoys. This guy is leading you into a trap. Hashtag Fed. You've got at Puck Daddy 93, Joe here, who, again, looking for his 15 minutes of fame. We've seen, if you've been on social media, if you follow politics, you've seen his stuff before. I'm not even going to play the audio for this jag off. Just look at this. Him thinking, oh, look, I'm all for Canada, ladies and gents. Let's go. Let's go. Right? Let's storm the hill. Let's show him who's boss. Right? This isn't the answer. Luckily, a friend of the channel does have the answer. Somebody who was involved in the Freedom Convoy. I'm going to stress that what I'm about to show you is not from Tamara Leach. It is not from Chris Barber. I could say who it's from. It is somebody who was involved in the convoy, who was up at the I guess, the table with everybody else. But they thought the message is more important than their name. So let's talk about it. They have written this letter to the organizers of this Freedom Convoy, stating what the alternative should be and why it's detrimental that this is not the way we handle things. In January 2025, Canada remains under the leadership of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who has recently prorogued Parliament until March 2025. Additionally, a federal election has been scheduled for October 2025. Again, I'm sure it's going to be before then, but that's a definitive date as of now. There is a second Freedom Convoy being considered with the goal of demanding an immediate federal election. In 2022, the original Freedom Convoy protested for 24 days in Ottawa against the federal COOF mandates seeking their removal for all Canadians. In response, Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act, leading to a police crackdown on protests, including arrests and asset seizures. Again, we don't have to re-educate on that. Everybody's well aware of what happened then. Currently, various protests are ongoing throughout Canada, notably from Palestinian groups and, in the past, related to the Ukrainian-Russian war. However, public sentiment suggests that many Canadians are weary of large-scale protests, particularly anything resembling another Freedom Convoy in Ottawa. Again, very good point. This is why it's a bad idea. Many Canadians desire reprieve from turmoil, but they are not getting it due to continued unrest from various activist movements and the instability of the Liberal government. Additionally, Liberal supporters remain loyal and do not support an early election. So he points out here a strategic shift, a referendum, instead of an election demand. One of the critical lessons from the Freedom Convoy in 2022 is the importance of having a clear and legally sound objective. The convoy was not there to demand an election, but to call for an end to all federal COOF mandates. Canada has no direct mechanism for voters to demand an election. Only members of Parliament have the authority to trigger one. Again, very good point being made. Instead of demanding an election outright, the movement should advocate for a referendum on whether voters want an election. This approach would provide a democratic and structured method to gauge public sentiment. It would address concerns from Liberal supporters who argue that protests, like the convoy, aim to overthrow the government. It would increase legitimacy by aligning the protest with constitutional processes rather than perceived populist upheaval. All valid points. This is the same thing I've said in live streams on other videos, that this is why we need to start asking the incoming governments that are popular in the polls right now, what are you doing to ensure Canadians have more control going forward and that the laws benefit us, not you guys? This is all what this is getting towards. We need the power, not the government. Here's the importance of a clearly written statement. A major issue observed during the 2022 Freedom Convoy was the absence of a clearly articulated written statement of demands and objectives presented to the government, media, and police. The convoy was calling for an end to all federal mandates. Yet because there was no formal written statement, the mainstream media was able to interpret and misrepresent the goals of the protest, often in a negative light. We all saw that unfold. Here's recommendations. Never use the word manifesto due to its negative connotations. Develop a publicly available document that states the grievances, justifications, goals, and expected outcomes for Canadians. Ensure multiple channels of distribution, social media, physical copies, email campaigns, so that mainstream media is forced to report on the stated goals rather than creating their own misleading narrative. Again, if everybody marches on Parliament Hill, that's all this is going to do. We need to establish message discipline among all participants to prevent mission creep, where the different groups dilute or confuse the original message by adding unrelated demands. Here are legal considerations. In April of 22, Ontario Premier Doug Ford passed Bill 100, formerly known as Keeping Ontario Open for Business Act, in 2022. This legislation was enacted to prevent disruptions at a critical transportation infrastructure in Ontario, particularly in response to the Freedom Convoy. It would introduce strict measures to limit vehicle-based protests and imposes severe penalties for violations. Key provisions of the bill are prohibition of impediments. Individuals are prohibited from blocking access to, exiting from, or regular use of protected transportation infrastructure if such actions disrupt economic activity or public safety. It also is prohibition that applies to whether a person is acting alone or with others and includes the use of vehicles or other means. Exceptions exist for minor or easily avoidable disruptions. Here's another key provision. prohibition on assistance. It is illegal to knowingly assist another person in actions that contravenes the law, such as providing supplies, fuel, or materials that support blockades. Again, I would urge the province of Ontario to maybe look into some of the Palestine protests when it comes to those laws. The enforcement of powers. Police authority. Law enforcement officers can order individuals to cease illegal activities, disperse gatherings, or remove vehicles obstructing infrastructure. Vehicle seizure and license suspension. Police can seize license plates and suspend vehicle permits for 14 days if a vehicle is used in violation of the Act. And for commercial vehicles, the Ontario Register of Motor Vehicles has the authority to suspend or revoke commercial vehicle permits if involved in unlawful blockades. Penalties for conviction. Individuals who violate Bill 100 face fines of up to $100,000, imprisonment for up to 1 year, or both. Who has $100K kicking around? You don't think they're going to go light? They're just going to say, here, pay $2,000? They're going to go for the full money. Commercial operators and businesses involved in unlawful blockades can face permanent revocation of their operating licenses, so you can lose your driver's license in full. Drivers found guilty may have their licenses suspended for 14 days and their vehicles impounded. Individuals who violate Bill 100 face fines and potential criminal charges. Commercial operators and businesses involved in unlawful blockades can face permanent revocation of their operating licenses. Drivers found guilty may have their licenses suspended for 14 days and their vehicles impounded. Understanding this law is essential for any future action that may involve vehicles, as it significantly increases the risk of legal repercussions. Protesters must adapt their strategy accordingly, which again isn't being done here. I just showed you the video of Puck Daddy. It's all about, I want my 15 minutes. I want to be the leader. I want to be on the camera. I want to be front and center, lead the charge, right? This is the problem when you take the fight to the government's doorstep. What we were talking about doing on this channel was a digital pushback of sorts, having some form of control. This will result in massive charges, police, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. When you're dealing with police and government officials, never break the law. You are preventing a political solution to a political problem. Or you're protesting that, not a police solution to a political problem. Law enforcement agencies will seek to gather intelligence on protest organizers through police liaison officers. We saw that with the Coots 4, even though it was done deceptively. These officers act as intermediaries, but ultimately report back to their chain of command, contributing to an operational plan that could be used to dismantle the protest. Recommendations. Always have a lawyer present for any meetings or discussions with law enforcement. Document every interaction. Maintain detailed notes and recordings where legally permissible. Refuse to engage with police unless an elected official is present, and this ensures that discussions remain political rather than being framed as a law enforcement issue. Exercise the right to remain silent when necessary. Protesters are seeking a political resolution, not a police-mediated settlement. Strategic deployment for decentralized protests. Given the prorogation of Parliament, the highest heightened legal risks in Ottawa, the center of gravity for future actions should shift to the 211 Liberal and NDP MP offices across Canada, not on Parliament Hill. This decentralization strategy provides several advantages. So essentially what this person is talking about is that instead of going to Parliament Hill, this should be a nationwide protest organized for people to be out front of Liberal and NDP MP offices. It's to disperse law enforcement resources, making it harder for authorities to suppress the movement. It engages local communities directly, increasing grassroots support. It avoids the direct confrontation with the federal government in Ottawa, reducing the risk of severe crackdowns. All good points. However, a smaller contingent should still maintain a presence on Wellington Street in front of Parliament Hill, ensuring the visibility in the nation's capital while avoiding unnecessary escalation. So again, have a small group on Parliament Hill, not thousands, not people drinking, not people partying, people there for a cause. Here's the conclusion written: never break the law. You have the right to peacefully assemble. You don't have the right to break any laws. Future protests must learn from the successes and mistakes of 2022 rather than calling an election outright. The movement should demand a referendum to gauge public sentiment. A clearly articulated and widely distributed statement of demands is crucial to prevent media distortion. Protesters must also adopt to legal changes, particularly Bill 100, and adopt a decentralized protest strategy targeting MP offices nationwide while maintaining a symbolic presence in Ottawa. Lastly, interactions with law enforcement should be strictly managed to prevent intelligence gathering and legal entrapment. By following these recommendations, future protests can be more effective, legally resilient, and aligned with democratic principles, making them harder for opponents to dismiss or suppress. This is, again, why it's so important that this letter is out there. It's talking about an actual solution rather than just we charge the hill. We get our torches and pitchforks. We're just giving them what they need to work against us. It's the time to be smart. It's the time to strategize. What's being proposed in Ottawa here is absolute lunacy. I want to show everybody this statement of grievances, justifications, goals, and expected outcomes for a national referendum on immediate federal election that was sent to me as well. I know it's a long video, folks. Stay with me here. The current Liberal NDP coalition government has demonstrated an ongoing pattern of corruption, ethical violations, and mismanagement, leading to a crisis confidence among Canadian citizens. This government has disregarded the principles of democracy and good governance, failing to uphold its duty to serve the interests of the people. The key grievances include erosion of democratic integrity. The current coalition government was not elected as a majority, but the functionality bypassed the electoral's intent by forming a backroom alliance that prevents accountability and opposition oversight. 2. Rampant government scandals, from the SDC Lavalin affair, We Charity scandal, Agacon controversy, numerous other ethical violations. The government has shown a disregard for integrity and transparency. It's a violation of charter rights and freedoms, the unprecedented use of emergency powers to suppress peaceful protest, freezing citizens' bank accounts, and enforcing unconstitutional mandates have set a dangerous precedent. Also, economic mismanagement and burden on Canadians, the carbon tax, reckless spending, billions sent abroad, particularly to Ukraine, while ignoring domestic economic struggles, have led to increased cost of living crisis for everyday Canadians. 5. Foreign interference in national security. The government's failure to prevent foreign interference in Canadian elections and security matters raises serious concerns about the sovereignty and independence of our nation. The justifications for a national referendum. My goodness, I'm sorry. The Canadian electorate has no mechanism to directly call for an election under the current parliament system. Our members of parliament can trigger an election through a non-confidence vote, an option that is being actively blocked by a coalition government. A national Holy crap, guys, I'm sorry. A national referendum is the only democratic solution to determine whether Canadians won an election immediately, bypassing the political maneuvering of career politicians. A referendum allows the Canadian people to formally express their will through a transparent, lawful, and structural process, avoiding accusations of populist upheaval or unconstitutional actions. It respects both democracy and the rule of law, ensuring that the government can no longer ignore the voices of its citizens. Goals of a national referendum. The purpose of the referendum is to empower Canadians with a direct voice in determining whether the current government should be dissolved and an election called. The key objectives include holding a binding national vote on whether a federal election should be held immediately. It's also restoring public confidence in Canadian democracy by ensuring the government is held accountable to its citizens. Reestablishing transparency and good governance by ensuring all government actions are subject to public oversight rather than backroom deals. Ensuring economic responsibility, demanding that the government prioritize Canadian taxpayers and domestic concerns over foreign spending. Protecting fundamental rights and freedoms, ensuring the suppression of peaceful protests and overreach of government powers are never repeated. Again, these are all points I've touched down on many, many times on this channel, saying, what are conservatives going to do getting into power to ensure basically these things don't happen to us ever again? The expected outcomes of a referendum passes. Dissolution of parliament. The current government would be compelled to dissolve and trigger a general election with a constitutionality mandated time frame. Newly elected government would have a direct and renewed mandate from the people, ensuring the policies reflect the will of the majority. The abuses of power, scandals, and mismanagement of taxpayers' funds would be formally addressed during the election process, ensuring greater transparency moving forward. Setting a precedent for future direct democracy throughout national referendums, allowing citizens a formal mechanism to hold their leaders accountable when Parliament fails to do so. Again, I've asked Garnet Jenness about this when he was on the channel about, Alberta has recall legislation. Could we ever see recall legislation at a federal level? He said no, because we'd be recalling people all the time. This is where it states something needs to be done here. We need a failsafe. Redirecting government priorities from foreign aid and unnecessary taxation to domestic economic relief and national security to protest Canadians' interests. A clear message to Canadians would be politicians that Canadians demand to be consulted on all major decisions within government. Final call to action. Canadians are facing a critical moment in history. If the government will not listen to the people, then the people must demand a referendum to force an election. A national referendum is a peaceful, democratic, and constitutional way to ensure that power is restored to the citizens where it rightfully belongs. The demand for a referendum is not a matter of partisanship or ideology, but a fundamental question of democracy. Do you want a federal election immediately? If the answer from the people is yes, then it is the duty of the government to follow the will of the people. The time to act is now. I don't know about you guys, but again, without mentioning the person from the Freedom Convoy who gave me these documents that they put together, I don't know about you, but this sounds like the best advice we've been given in a long, long time. I know it's a long video, so I'm going to wrap it up asking, what do you guys think down below? Do you agree with Convoy 2.0, or do you think that this letter stating that we should do a national-wide protest organizing in front of all the MP offices between Liberal and NDP is what's called for and seems to be the right path of action to remain constitutional, to keep our rights intact, and to avoid legal discourse? Let me know your thoughts down below. If it's your first time here, again, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure you hit your bell for notifications. Join me live. I go live from time to time, but always Friday nights here for Friday Night Fringe, my live streaming show where I sit down with my beautiful wife, Mrs. Fringe, and we go over everything that has happened this week in politics, everything coming up in the week ahead, and some back and forth within our community, hearing what you guys have to say outside of making these videos. We both love sitting and hearing what you guys have to say each and every Friday night, including this Friday, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, here on the channel. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts down below. Leave a thumbs up on the way out. I hope you enjoyed this video and have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.